This happened 2 years ago, on Halloween night in 2023. I'm 25 now, but back then I was 22. I'd just come off a long day at work for a festival we dethroned at the community center, whirlwind of competitive games, costume contests, candy trivia, and the chaotic roar of a kids vs parents dodgeball match. It was a blast, but it left me completely drained. As a community worker, these events are my normal, but that doesn't make them any less exhausting. When it was over, I went home, fully intending to call it a night. About an hour after I'd settled in, around 6 o'clock, my phone rang. It was my little sister, Savannah. She was calling because she and my nephew, Jackson, needed someone to take them trick-or-treating. Our parents and Jackson's were bowing out. So, as usual, the job of cool big brother fell to me. Savannah was 15. Jackson was 11. I was running on empty, but I hauled myself off the couch, threw on some clothes, and drove to my parents' house to get them. When I arrived, I asked if they were ready. Savannah was putting the final touches on her costume. She was dressed as Raven from Teen Titans, complete with the stark white makeup that gave her a haunting, ghostly pop. Jackson was Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat, looking every bit the ice-cold warrior. Once Savannah was satisfied, we piled into the car and set off. I took them to a bustling neighborhood known for its generous candy halls. The second we arrived, we dove in, moving from one lit porch to the next. The atmosphere was electric and friendly, with everyone overflowing with treats. One house stood out an older man who was grilling. He handed each of them a hot dog and a soda, explaining that he always gives out protein on Halloween. He believes it's better for growing baddies. The world needs more people like him. Other kids complimented Savannah and Jackson on their costumes, and I saw some incredibly creative get-ups myself. The whole community had truly gone all out. After hitting the last house, we began the 10-minute walk back to the car. The neighborhood had quieted down, the crowds thinning into an eerie calm. That's why the figure across the street immediately put me on alert. In a yard with no porch light, a person stood perfectly still, dressed head to toe in black. I'm surprised I spotted them at all, but I have a habit of scanning my surroundings. Squinting through the darkness, I could make out a hooded cloak over an all-black outfit and a mask that completely obscured their face. I couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman, but one thing was clear. They seemed to be watching us. Stay close to me, I told Savannah and Jackson, my voice low. There's someone suspicious across the yard. Look, but don't stare. I said it so they could identify the person without provoking them. Jackson just laughed, thinking it was someone trying to spook passersby. Savannah, however, looked genuinely worried. For context, I was carrying a backpack with a Glock inside, and Savannah knew it. My tone told her this wasn't a game. Jackson, thankfully, was clueless. He's too young to know I carry. As we walked away, I felt that gaze still pinned on us, a pressure between my shoulder blades. We were almost to the car when I heard the distinct, heavy crunch of boots on concrete behind us. I turned. It was the same figure, but now the details were terrifyingly clear. They wore a tactical vest, black pants tucked into tactical boots, and a full spandex mask that erased their features. The outfit screamed one thing. This person was armed. He's following us, I thought. I leaned in close to the kids, whispering urgently. I need you both to listen very carefully. Do not stop walking. Do not look back. The person I pointed out is behind us. The last thing we want is to alarm them. Just keep your composure and keep moving. I focused most of this on Jackson, hoping he'd grasp the gravity. Savannah understood completely. We kept a steady pace, stealing occasional glances over our shoulders. The follower maintained the same distance, a shadow mirroring our movement. When we reached the car, they were still coming. That's when I made my move. I pulled out my Glock and leveled it at them. Why are you following us? The person's hands shot up. A gesture of surprise, and they slowly peeled off the mask. It was a woman, maybe in her 30s. She stared at me, her expression unreadable. I asked again, the gun still steady. Why are you following us? What she said next made no sense. In a flat, almost robotic tone, she replied, I'm an undercover cop. I was told there was a break-in, so I came to check it out. That's why I was standing outside that house. But when you looked at me funny, I assumed you were the one who did it. So, it would be wise to lower that weapon, or I could have you arrested for threatening an officer of the law. I hesitated, then lowered the gun. What else could I do? I didn't want an arrestor to traumatize the kids further. But her story was full of holes. If she was investigating a break-in, why was she standing with her back to the house? How did my looking at her make me the prime suspect? Why would a burglar casually stroll through the neighborhood afterward? And why the theatrical cloak? The questions swarmed in my mind. If you're undercover, why the tactical gear? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? And what's with the cloak? She didn't answer. She just stared. But her expression shifted. Something malicious flickered in her eyes. An irritation that I wasn't buying her story. Jackson and Savannah were frozen in silence. Then she smiled a creepy, unsettling stretch of lips. If you didn't have that gun, she said, this night would have ended a hell of a lot different for you. As the last word left her mouth, 4 figures emerged from the gaps between the houses, advancing toward us. All were clad in tactical gear, but without the cloaks. Get in the car. Now? I barked at Savannah and Jackson. I kept my eyes locked on the woman and her approaching team until I heard the car door slam. I jumped in and sped off. In the rearview mirror, the woman stood motionless, that same chilling smile on her face. The others 3 men and another woman were blank-faced, their eyes utterly soulless. It's hard to explain. The drive back was utterly silent. The kids were as shell-shocked as I was. I dropped them off, ensured they were safely inside, then went home to try and process the night. The question that haunted me was why us? The streets had been packed. Why were we the targets? I wish I could say it ended there. A few days later, a text came from an unknown number. No words, just a photo of my car, taken in the parking lot of my apartment complex. I contacted the police and filed a report, recounting the entire Halloween ordeal. They took my statement, but said they couldn't investigate without a direct threat. Typical. Driven by a mix of curiosity and stupidity, I went back to the house where I'd first seen the woman. A man in his 40s answered the door. Primera, Askedif. Eddie had a break-in on Halloween. He looked confused and said no. He'd gone to bed early for work and hadn't noticed anything unusual. He had no idea what I was talking about. I thanked him and left. I already knew her story was a lie, but I needed to see for myself. Whoever that woman and her group were, they had my phone number and knew where I lived. It makes me wonder, was that night not random at all? Had they been watching me? Was my being armed the only thing that derailed their plan? These thoughts tormented me, fueling a paranoia that took a long time to fade. I started therapy and installed a Ring camera just to feel safe in my own home. For the record, I haven't heard from any unknown numbers since. Nothing else has happened since that picture. 2 years later, the memory of that night still visits me. Writing this out is part of my process, an attempt to fully move on. But if there's one thing I want anyone to take from this, it's this. Always watch your surroundings. You never know who might be watching you. It's terrifyingly easy to stumble into danger just by existing. So, always stay safe and protected. I can say with full confidence that being armed that night is what saved our lives.